The Pine and Adri, the Pine and Adri Show, Part 3.
But there is evidence to back up, and historic evidence for people to back up to be recognized as transgender.
I think it's worth pointing out that you don't need historic evidence of something for something to be considered valid. I think if you do need historic evidence to consider something valid, then maybe don't use any new technology that hasn't been around for like more than 10 years. No new technology for you, because there's no historic evidence for it, you know? Do you see how dumb that argument is?
Catastrophe is somewhat correct here. There isn't scientific evidence to back up someone being Therian. However, this argument is still flawed because it fails to recognize the fact that therianthropy isn't a physical or biological phenomenon.
Exactly. And honestly, if we're being honest, not all transgender stuff is a biological phenomenon either. Like, some of it is a social thing, and so is being a Therian, and that's okay. Not everything has to be science-oriented or medicalized in any way to be valid either. To be clear, I don't think that's what this person is saying when they're saying or pointing this out, but I'm just adding my 2 cents as far as it not needing to be those things to be valid. So, yeah.
It's a spiritual and sometimes mental one. So, yeah, of course there aren't biological studies on therianthropy because it isn't a biological phenomenon. I feel like if Catastrophe did, 5 minutes of research minimum, she would have realized this and wouldn't have put it in her take.
So it is possible that Catastrophe didn't do research and didn't know this, but it is also really possible that Catastrophe is what people call a transmed, meaning someone who believes that transitioning and being trans and all that is exclusively a medical phenomenon, which is bullshit. Basically, anytime you hear something with med at the end of it, so like transmed, cismed, it's someone that thinks that being trans, being a system, being whatever needs to be a medicalized thing, which is bullshit for so many reasons. I've shared this video with other people as a good source for mainly trying to share it with Otherkin and Therians as a good source for when someone's talking a bunch of bullshit. Actually, I have a little story to tell y'all, which makes the fact that I now have the phone storage to do this video super awesome, because so over the weekend I got banned from a server that a ex-friend of mine ran. They, in the first week of running the server, said a lot of anti-Otherkin and, in my opinion, cismed shit. And in my opinion, they have been around people who are Otherkin and people who are non-disordered systems long enough that they should have known better. So, anyway, me and them got in a little back and forth. And then the next day, I decided to just yeet this video, not my video, but this original video, the one I'm responding to, where we have the one person calling out the other person's bullshit. I decided to yeet that into both the mod chat where the argument had happened, and then in the Otherkin thread that was in the disability section. And that was because I figured, you know what, the other conversation the other day made me realize that it's good to have sources, because I went looking for this during the original argument and couldn't find it. And one of my other friends had cited an article that had similar points, which I think is good, but I also personally think it's good to have multiple different kinds of sources, like articles, videos, whatever. So anyway, so I showed this in the mod chat, and I shared it in the other thread like I had said before. Well, my ex-friend, in all of their geniusness, decided to assume that meant I was picking back up the conflict we had started the other day, which, no, I wasn't. If I was going to pick up the conflict that we'd started the other day, I would have done it in a public chat. One that's popular, general or something. If I really wanted to call them on their shit, I would have done it in public. 'cause my original plan was to, like, show their, like, screenshots of the history of them saying a lot of fucked shit, but I decided not to. So I was not intending to start a conflict. I just wanted people to have a source for when people spout bullshit. Plus, they were asking me during the debate. Mind you, the debate was at work. Like, I was at work when they started their bullshit. Because for background, I had created a channel. I guess they didn't really want me to create said channel, so then I got, like, they were kind of yelling at me about it, being all upsetty spaghetti, that they felt there wasn't, even though 3 people had mentioned being interested, and then another person who wasn't part of the OG conversation posted in the channel. So it was like, clearly there was an interest, and this person just unilaterally decided it didn't need to be there. So anyway, point is, they were asking me to cite some sources. I couldn't find said sources, and like I said, I was on my way to work, so I didn't really have the time to dedicate to this anyway. But the point is, in my opinion, at this point, alright, at the point that I posted the thing, there was nothing to fucking argue about. This person was spouting bullshit. I wasn't gonna sit there and take their bullshit. And we mutually agreed to just stop the arguing or whatever the fuck, for the sanity of everyone else in the mod chat. So, yeah, this was literally just me posting a source. So yeah, I'm not responding to... I'm reacting to the person that this person is reacting to, more so than the person that is doing the reacting. I just want to react to their reactions as well, because I want to add my thoughts as someone who is trans and Aryan and plural and all that stuff, so I wanted to, like, add my thoughts. So, yeah. For the sake of transparency, the thing that actually got me banned from the server was the fact that I essentially told this person that if they were just going to accuse me of starting conflict, then I would actually do something. The context being, I would actually start conflict. But this person, I guess, took it, I don't know, well, they took it as a threat or whatever, which I guess it kind of was, but it was just more a statement of, like, okay, fine, you're going to accuse me of starting shit, like, guess I may as well just start shit. So, you know, that's actually what got me banned. But, I kind of lost all respect for this person at this point, so, because if you can't tell by my previous nuggets of information, this person is willfully ignorant on the topic, and has been for, like, the past 2 years. So, not particularly interested in giving this person grace on the topic. And, yeah, didn't think that I'd have real-world experience with the bullshit being talked about in this video. But yeah, now I do, and I guess I technically have, and just kind of in the original parts of this video, had kind of forgotten that, oh yeah, I know someone in real life, or not in real life, like, well, in real life, but online, who has these shit takes. Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that in the other videos, that this is something that I have actually seen with my own 2 eyeballs, unfortunately. So, yeah, anyway, back to the video.
Actually, I think if Catastrophe did any research on Therians, this video probably wouldn't exist at all.
I would disagree, because unfortunately there is a lot of people that, unless something directly affects them, they don't give a shit. So I kind of feel like there's a lot of people, like my ex-friend, for example, who they don't want to learn shit, so they just don't bother. Even if you give them research and information, they just choose not to learn about it. They choose not to educate themselves on the topic because they can't be fucking bothered to. They can't be bothered to open up their brains and actually learn about other people's experiences and not be a jerk about things. So yeah.
And this is more of a personal opinion on my part, but it always rubs me the wrong way whenever someone brings up science and biology in terms of being trans.
Big agree here. Transmedicalism sucks, and honestly needs to just fall off the face of the earth.
Even if it's in support of trans people. Because, like, even if there weren't scientific or biological studies on being transgender, I feel like people should still be accepting of someone identifying as trans. I feel like it shouldn't take a scientific study for you to simply accept and respect someone else's
All
identity.
the cismed anti-endo people need to hear this clip right now, the one that just came before this bit here. And so yeah, if you want to tell those type of people to shut the fuck up, feel free to clip that part of this video with me saying to them, y'all need to shut the fuck up.
Regardless of how much you truly understand it. And this goes back to theoryantropy too. They aren't hurting anyone by identifying as Therian, so genuinely what is stopping you in simply respecting and accepting
In a
them?
lot of cases, it's a superiority complex and a lack of brain cells. They need to feel better than another group, or they need to feel like their group is better than another group, so therefore that group that's not as good as them is bad and harmful and blah 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 blah. That's usually why. It's kind of a victim complex, like genuinely. At least in the case of cismeds and transmeds and people that don't like Otherkin and Therian, it's usually I need to feel like you're a problem to me because I have nothing better to do with my time.
Either way, the narrative that there isn't any history to back up theoryantropy here is not true.
Okay, genuinely excited to hear this next bit because I forgot about the fact that there is history to back them up. Obviously, there doesn't need to be, but, you know, it's cool that there is.
In fact, when making this video, I realized that since Catastrophe didn't bother to do her own research before uploading her video, I figured, why not do the research for her and add it into mine?
Gonna lie, that's a sick burn right there. Ouch.
The first source I'll be going over is the Otherkin lexicon, written by O. Scribner. The entire document is pretty much a dictionary of labels, used in both the Otherkin and Therianthrope communities. The dictionary was written in 2012, but published in 2013, and the reason I'm including it as one of my main examples is because it was written over a decade ago and both acknowledges and gives detailed definitions of over 100 terms and labels used in both the Otherkin and Therianthrope communities. And even if you don't consider a decade to be that long ago in terms of history, many of these terms are ones that have existed for decades, if not centuries, throughout history. So, with this in mind, let's look to the Otherkin lexicon for those definitions of theoryantropy.
Yeah, it is an extremely useful source, even if it is, like, old. It still holds up, if that makes sense.
1. Therian, abbreviation of Therianthrope. From about 2005 to the present, 2012, this abbreviation is very commonly used throughout the entire Therianthrope community. 2. Therianthrope. Second definition used within the context of the Therian community, Therianthropes are real people who identify as animals. The Therianthrope community began as the newsgroup alt.horror.werewolves, also abbreviated as AHWW, in 1993, where they began talking about how they identify as animals. This started with apparently no knowledge of any other groups of people who identify as other than human. There, they took up the word Therianthrope for themselves in 1994. And, since I think this is valuable to include, the definition of Therianthrope in the context of anthropology has existed since 1885.
Dang, that's old. And also, dang, this makes my ex-friend look even dumber because they majored in anthropology. I mean, obviously, majoring in something doesn't mean you know everything about it, but dang.
Which is well over a century ago. So, basically, what I'm trying to point out here is that many of these labels and terms that the Therian community uses today have existed as far back as the late 1800s, and that, clearly, there is at least some sort of history tied to these labels. Now, let's move on to my second example, which actually happens to be about alt.horror.werewolf.
Also, side note, modern history is in fact history, just saying.
Specifically, their FAQ and the history of their site and how this connects to theoryantropy. According to an archived Where.net page written in 2001, it seems this FAQ was written and revised back in the mid-90s. On part 1 of their FAQ page, which I was able to find through a private domain called firelion.org, there's an introduction of the site itself in the first section. Welcome to alt.horror.werewolves. This news group is probably a little different than most groups you've come across the Usenet. If you're reading it based on the name, then chances are you have an interest in werewolves and horror genre fiction. So do we, but there's more to it than that. We talk about theriomorphs, both physical and spiritual, about methods of changing, about personal philosophies, and about fun. What were all those terms up there? Read on, everything will be explained in time. But be aware that AHWW is more than seems at first glance. I think what they meant to say is it's more than what it seems, but probably just a typo.
If I can remember to put it in the description, I will put a video that is related to Norse heathenry, and also kind of related to, like, spirituality and animals and stuff like that. So yeah, if I remember to, I will put that in the description as well.
Continuing on to the second section, titled A Little History, we can highlight some of the history of alt.horror.werewolves and how its community transformed. AHWW was originally grouped in November 16, 1992, as a logical extension of the alt.horror hierarchy. As such, it was intended for discussion of horror genre movies and books dealing with werewolves. It received very little traffic, on the order of 2 or 3 posts a day, if that. It began to attract folks with an intense interest in werewolves and shapeshifters in general. Gradually, the conversations shifted to discuss what werewolves meant to these people personally, and how they entered into their worldview. As the discussions grew more and more philosophical, a concept known as spiritual therianthropy was formed. Then, in part 2, we have another section titled, What's Spiritual Therianthropy? Physical therianthropy has been defined as the ability to shift from human to animal form and back again. Spiritual therianthropy, then, is the ability to mentally transform from normal human mode of thinking and reacting to an animal one. Each one of us identifies with an animal whose characteristics we feel reflect our own. All humans are animals, but very few these days can look into themselves and find the animal remnants.
Also reminds me a lot of age regression. A person can either view this little part of themselves or the animal part of themselves, I guess in the case of this video, as either a separate, completely compartmentalized part of their identity, or as kind of a headspace they slip in and out of. That's one aspect of non-disordered plurality, is that you literally can just have these things, I can recognize them all as parts of me, but they are compartmentalized to where I view them as separate parts of me because of, whatever life circumstances, whatever society likes to put people in boxes, and I think sometimes we then tend to kind of compartmentalize our personalities into boxes. At least, I feel like that's some of the source of my plurality. Some of it is a coping mechanism for, ADHD and anxiety, and who knows, there may be some, traumagenic shit in there too, but I wouldn't really consider that the main day-to-day function of my plurality personally.
Who believe in spiritual therianthropy feel those animal remnants very strongly. We exist in the human world but long to seek connections with the animal one. It contacts us through totems, through dreams, through our very souls. We cannot completely leave the human world, nor completely enter the animal one. Half animal and half human in psyche, mental or spiritual, shape changers.
I will also say though, if you are someone who considers yourself to be a non-human animal type thingy, please don't take from closed practices like Native American spirituality and things like that as part of your, especially spiritual practice or your identity or whatever. That's why I mentioned the heathenry video, because it doesn't have, it's a modern practice and it's not from a closed practice like Native American spirituality or things like that, or really indigenous practices in general tend to be closed practices. So yeah, be respectful, don't do cultural appropriation, and have fun.
I think just from these descriptions, we can look deeper into the history of therianthropy, especially in regards to the history of its community. Since I feel those descriptions from before are self-explanatory in their own context, I'll now be moving on to my last example. The third example is the oldest out of the three, the religious system of China. The Religious System of China, published in 1892, was written by Jan Jacob Maria de Groot, a Dutch sinologist and a historian of religion. The title of the book kind of explains itself. It goes over a lot of the ancient history and customs of Chinese religion. I won't be going over the entire book in this video, otherwise it'd probably be hours long, so I'll only be going over a specific part of the book in this section. I'll specifically be highlighting the page titled Willful Change of Men into Beasts, where it details beliefs of men changing from a human form to a wolf one, as well as tigers and other beasts through the means of magic. Those men, he wrote, seem to be wizards, as the Scythians and the Greeks established in Scythia assert that every one of them changes himself once a year into a wolf, and retains this shape for some days, then to return to the human form. The tale of Chu Chen's slave shows a new feature in Chinese tiger lore, which, like so many others, we find also in therianthropy elsewhere in Asia and in Europe. Namely, that the change into a beast may be brought about artificially and willfully by means of charms, spells, and other instruments of witchcraft. The Garos we saw on page 164 are stated to transform themselves into tigers by applying medicine on the forehead. The Javanese have their Nomu Gadugan lit, their science or spells by which men may turn themselves into tigers. Some of the were-tiger legends that we have placed before our readers decidedly put forth the human soul as having a prominent share in the metamorphosis.
as a history nerd, I found this really interesting, and as someone who, like I said, it's interesting that this phenomenon exists in a lot of different cultures all around the world. So, like, that's really cool.
I'm mainly pointing out this section of the book to hopefully illustrate that there's genuine historic evidence of, at the very least, similarities to modern therianthropy within the context of other ancient cultures that have existed for centuries.
This has mainly been me, Pine Tree, making the commentary right now in this episode. Adrian's just kind of in the background. If you've ever seen a Girl Defined video and how the one person talks, the other one's just like, Adrian's just in the background doing that, But y'all can't hear it because he's in my brain, because we share a brain.
Not only that, but these labels and beliefs, used over a century ago, seem to have carried on throughout the following decades, slowly transforming into what we know modern therianthropy to be today. Which is exactly why Catastrophe's bold narrative that there is no history tied to therianthropy is ignorant at best.
Personally willing to assume that it's willful ignorance, because I just genuinely don't think people are this uninformed on topics, without it being willful ignorance, because Google is free.
I feel like if she did any research on this community at all, she wouldn't be preaching this hard about how there's zero evidence to back up the existence of therianthropy. Not only that, but I feel like her takes throughout this video wouldn't be so harsh and misinformed if she did any research at all. And that's pretty much all the historic context and research I wanted to provide in this section, so let's jump back into Catastrophe's video.
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to, get drain bandaged.
History. Therians work hard. No, they don't. They make a mockery out of the people who work hard to be recognized.
I feel like this is really similar to when people ask, like, oh, the Otherkin, like, transition, like, literally had that asked when I pointed out that for me and my headmates, it seems like Therian and trans stuff are really similar. I mean, part of that is because most of us, for the most part, like, those of us who aren't, like, 100% aligned with the body gender, it tends to be a social thing for us. I mean, you know, and same with, like, the Therian stuff. But it can very much be a physical thing for some people. Like, some people do experience, like, when they're in, like, Therian kind of state of, like, feeling, you know, body parts that aren't actually literally there, and they're very well aware that those parts aren't literally there, but you still feel them because brains are weird and they do weird things. So, which is kind of similar to gender dysphoria because it can be really weird and uncomfortable. Actually, I have actually experienced that once, fronting with a headmate who had wings. We were co-con and you could kind of feel the wings. It was weird. But my brain does trippy shit all the time, so I'm kind of used to the weird. But yeah. So yeah, let's get back to the drain image.
In professional and every social setting.
Again, no specific examples to back this up.
Take professionalism is stupid and unnecessary.
A lot of what I have to say goes back to what I pointed out earlier, but I do want to point out here that this argument in particular is just really strange. I feel like the idea that one widely misunderstood community is less valid than another widely misunderstood community because, well, they don't work as hard as the other community, isn't
Adrian and I are pretty sure that this is called Oppression Olympics, but if that's not quite the right term, please let us know in the comments.
really a strong argument, and also not helpful to either communities in being accepted. No, Therians aren't a minority, and they don't experience the same level of oppression that trans people do.
I disagree with this, because, in my opinion, if someone's willing to make fun of you for any aspect of your identity, then yeah, they are kind of oppressing you. I know that probably sounds a bit hyperbolic, but just genuinely, it's discriminatory. So yeah, like, the discriminatory arguments that have been made throughout this whole video is kind of proof that this point isn't entirely accurate, actually, because it's not that Therians aren't discriminated against because they don't get as much discrimination as trans people. It's because they're not as widely known about as trans people, so therefore they don't get picked on by as many people. I can say, as someone who's on Reddit, people will very much make fun of you, if you are plural or trans or whatever, or like if you are there, and you'll get picked on to hell and back because people want to medicalize everything on that fucking hell site. So yeah,